guys, it's me, Aline here, and today I am doing something very different, which I am very excited / terrified for. I'm gonna be reading my old Harry Potter fan fiction. So when I was 11 to 14 years old, I was super into reading and writing fan fiction, and I wrote for 2 series. I wrote for the Sisters Grimm and I wrote for Harry Potter. My main fan fiction was called The Runaways, and it centered around Fred and Hermione, of all people. Just kidding, still low-key ship them. What? So I'm just gonna read you guys the summary. After the war ended, Hermione thought everything would be good and peaceful. After the war, Fred thought everything would be right again. What they did not expect was the marriage law and how it would shake their lives to their very cores and bring them together in a way they never thought possible. Mature tea for later chapters. Guys, it gets very not mature tea because I'm all about that build-up though, and I stopped writing before we actually got to the mature tea shit because I am also bad at finishing things. So I was thinking that would be really fun to re-experience my youth with you guys and humiliate myself for your entertainment, if that would be okay with you. I thought I would do these in installments. There are 12 chapters. I'm just gonna jump right into it. You guys can decide if you want to see more. I have my wand here. Also, disclaimer, if any of you guys go on my profile, I don't know, somehow track this down because you want to read it for yourselves, I beg you not to, but if you do, I know that there's a very problematic, serious fanfiction on there that features sexual harassment that I thought was romantic. When I was 14, I didn't know better, I was brainwashed by the patriarchy, and I just thought that that was how men flirted. No one had flirted with me, I didn't know. Just bear that in mind. We can talk about that a little bit more at a later date. So let's just jump right into The Runaways. Okay, also I'm just gonna say, my author's notes are hilarious, and they are featured at the beginning and end of every chapter, and I will be reading them in my obnoxious 14-year-old voice. Author's note. First chapter of my new fan fiction. Harry Potter won the poll by a landslide, and I'm so excited to write this. Real quick, Hermione's 18 and Fred is alive, all caps, and he's 20. Chapter 1. Hermione wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and unconsciously tried to tame her bushy hair that had started to frizz at the fumes from her cauldron. She had been working at Weasley's Wizard Wheezy's all summer, doing accounting and research for Fred and George.
What sophisticated language.
Thank you. Now, she was experimenting in the back room while sweating profusely and desperately trying to figure out what combination of potions would make a mixture that, when ingested, would automatically make you cry. Whoa. Fred and George were having trouble with this new product. They called it Cry Me a River, an American idiom, but okay. And Hermione, who had already been doing the books for a couple of months at their shop, had offered to help. This is a good premise. I like it so far. Hermione let out an angry huff and put her head in her hands. Suddenly, the doorbell jingled, and she immediately stood straight up as Fred strode into the room with a smirk on his face. A little jumpy there, Hermione. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna read the dialogue in my American accent. If you guys really want to hear some British ones for the next time, just let me know in the comments below. Fred strode into the room with a smirk on his face. A little jumpy there, Hermione. You weren't slacking off, were you? Of course not. I was just... She stopped herself as she realized he was joking. Oh, that trickster Fred. It's getting late. I'm just about to close up, he said. Hermione nodded absent-mindedly and went back to her work. Fred turned to leave, but looked back at her. Come back to the Burrow for dinner. You've put in enough hours for today. I'm sure Mum would love to have you, and Ronnykins would be so excited. Oh, look at me. I'm throwing a little Ron action, a little teasing of the whole Ron storyline. I also will say, I do like Ron and Hermione together. Hermione ignored his comment. I would, but... She looked longingly down at the bubbling concoction, desperate to solve this mystery. Fred chuckled. What is it, Hermione? Started a great love affair with the pewter cauldron, have you? Hermione grimaced. Funny, she said unenthusiastically as she turned back to the simmering pot, as if by staring at it for long enough she could figure out the puzzle. Fred looked at her with an amused look plastered on his face until Hermione finally threw her hands up in the air and Fred burst out laughing. I don't know how to do this, Fred. I'm top of my class and I can't figure this out. There's no way I can do this. It's just not possible. I can't make a potion that makes you cry. I can't. This has never happened to me before. Blimey, Hermione, calm down, Fred said urgently. Ooh, a little accent got stuck in there. The blimey must have done it. Fred said urgently, striding around the work counter and quickly putting his hands on Hermione's shoulders, trying to soothe her. Breathe. It's fine. We will figure it out. George and I are really good at this stuff, and if we all put our heads together, we will find a way to make these damn bastards have the sniffles, so calm yourself. Calm. Are you calm? Hermione nodded and looked up at Fred, her eyes still full of concern. All my ingredients. They should add up. But they don't. Fred took his arms off Hermione's shoulders as he sighed. He rolled up his sleeves and a split second later slammed his hands down onto the countertop. What have you been brewing here, Hermione? He asked as he peered at the contents of the cauldron. Well, I have dittany, flaxweed, rose oil, honey water, syrup of hellebore, and eye of newt, which technically, if you add them all up, should give you a crying solution that lets up in a couple of minutes, Hermione faltered. But it doesn't. I researched all of these potion ingredients and I made up an equation of which ones would be suitable in this potion. So that's some nerdy trivia for you. Fred paused for a moment. Replace hellebore with arnica and we've got ourselves Crimea River, Hermione. Now let's go. Hermione gaped at Fred. But how? Syrup of hellebore is found in the draught of peace. It gives off a soothing effect, which would counteract your potion. I don't really consider crying a peaceful thing. I find it rather upsetting. But what? She was stuttering, looking utterly confused. Hermione, it's late. I don't want to play the role of Professor Snape. Can we just... Fred groaned, gesturing wildly at the door. This is me gesturing wildly at the door. Fine, Hermione said, giving in and letting Fred lead her through the store and out the front door. She felt the heat of the hot summer night and closed her eyes and let the fresh air rush over her as she listened to the click, click, click of her feet against the cobblestone street. Fred held out his arm and she took it, now used to apparating alongside the twins. She kept her eyes closed as she heard the loud crack and felt the familiar but yet unpleasant sensation of being pushed in, out, and backwards before she felt stable again and was standing in an empty field outside the burrow. Hermione immediately let go of Fred's arm and shifted away awkwardly. She couldn't help it. It was simply a reflex. A reflex, you say? Sounds like some untapped sexual tension, in my 14-year-old opinion. Fred made his way to the door and looked back at Hermione expectantly. Well, are you coming? Yes, just give me a minute, she said. Fred raised an eyebrow. It's just I haven't been out of the shop for a few days and the air feels so good. Fred nodded. I'll let Mum know that you'll be coming in eventually. Hermione thanked him and watched him open the door and march into the living room with a great call of, Blimey, that smells good! Mom, have you been cooking? God damn it, Ron, I'm not her! Get off, these robes are new! Ooh. That was some comedy. Hermione couldn't help but smile as she shuffled around in the dry grass until she was lying down on her back under the stars. The summer had been going by so fast. Hogwarts began next week and she couldn't believe it. It was so strange to think that she would be returning to school after a whole year of fighting against the dark arts. But Professor McGonagall had announced it in a letter sent to everyone of the Hogwarts students who had been 7th years last year. Every one of them must return for half a year to replenish the knowledge that was lost during the treacherous year. I used the word year a lot just then. Okay, that could have been a better sentence. Hermione shuddered. That year had been awful. It had been too dangerous and too horrific to even think about, and as she did, she became very conscious of the thin scars of writing etched into her skin. Very dark moment, Hermione reflecting on her past. Of course, they had won in the end though, and everything was at ease. The only thing that puzzled Hermione was about how the wizard race would survive for too much longer. The population had lost nearly 8,000 wizards. There had been whispers of a marriage law being decreed, and she prayed that the rumors were false. A marriage law? How ridiculous, thought Hermione, though she didn't know the details. She figured that no good could come of something like that. She presumed that if that happened, that she would have to marry Ron. Though she did like Ron, she wasn't sure if she wanted to marry him yet. The whole ordeal was really quite confusing to her. One kiss, and now everything was so completely bewildering. I'm gonna take a minute, because those of you who weren't as into fanfiction as I was, and especially the Harry Potter fanfiction scene, might not know this, but the marriage law was a classic plot device used in a lot of Harry Potter fanfiction. So in this plot device that a lot of people used, not just me, it was a lot of people. So in the wake of the Wizarding War in Book 7, there was so much death, and the wizards had lost so many people that the Ministry of Magic would decree that everybody over the age of like 18 had to get married in order to encourage the production of children. It's ridiculous. It was just a fun plot device to get people into different pairs than maybe you would ordinarily see, but it would cut writing time in half because it would get people into these scenarios that would just produce a lot of fun outcomes. So that's what the marriage law is, essentially. Not just my idea, many people's idea. I do not know where it originates, but I certainly took advantage of that. So let's just move along, shall we? She felt a sharp pain at her temple and took this as a sign to stop overthinking things for the night. So she crawled to her feet, brushed herself off, and gently placed a knock on the door. She heard Fred's voice exclaim loudly, "That'll be her, Ron. Make sure not to tackle her. She makes her way through the door." A split second, the door had swung open and Ron stood there in front of her, beaming. "Bloody hell, Hermione, I didn't even know you would be joining us." Classic Ron. There was a loud guffaw from the living room, where the second Weasley twin was sitting on the couch, his brother next to him. Fred muttered into his brother's ear, in a not-so-secretive whisper, "Yeah, right, like he wasn't just spending the past 15 minutes in the bathroom primping for this very occasion." Ron shot a death glare in the direction of his siblings and turned back to Hermione with a look of pure delight. "You doing all right, then?" "Oh, yes, lots of work, but I'm managing," Hermione smiled shyly. "I bet. I heard from Fred you're working more hours than they are." "I said no such thing," protested Fred, who was again eavesdropping. "Blow it out," Ron retorted. Lots of dialogue here, wow. "Why, you can't talk to me like that. I'm a guest," Fred gasped, pretending to be scandalized by his brother's words. "Yeah, right." That one was awkward, badly done. "Dinner!" cried Mrs. Weasley, entering the entryway. Okay, from the kitchen, and giving her two sons a look that warned them against bringing the fight to the dining table. She noticed Hermione and immediately broke into a beam. "Hello, Hermione, dear. How nice of you to join us for dinner. I dare say you deserve it after how hard you've been working." "Peckish?" "Very," said Hermione, letting Mrs. Weasley's warm smile wash over her and comfort her and let her worries of the marriage law dissolve. That was until Mr. Weasley and Percy began talking about it over dinner. "All I'm saying, Father, it is a reasonable move for the Ministry to make. I mean, more than 8,000 wizards lost. It will cost us in the long run if we don't hurry the process of reproduction along a bit," said Percy, in his always knowledgeable tone that automatically kept anyone from doubting him. That is very heteronormative. Like, hurry the process of reproduction up a bit. It's like, what if... We're not gonna go there, but that's not right. "Yes, but all I'm saying is that it isn't natural for people to produce children in this manner. You'll end up with unfit parents if it's passed, not to mention children as parents. After all, 17-year-olds would be affected," Mr. Weasley replied, frustrated. 17, that's so young. "The Ministry wouldn't really pass a law, would they, Dad?" asked Ginny, pale-faced, looking at her father concerned. Mr. Weasley sighed. "It looks more probable. I mean, it's a lot more innocent than what you know who is planning on doing to us. I will say, like, setting up women as child factories, not great. But this is crap. What if people refuse to obey the law?" Fred asked angrily. And I think this is where I was going, is because I didn't like the marriage law plot device, but I wanted to write about it and then have Fred and Hermione run away together to try to avoid the marriage law, and then they would fall in love while on the run from the government. That is what I think I was going with this, and that's why it's called The Runaways. But I don't get to it, so sorry. "Now, don't talk nonsense, Fred," Mr. Weasley spluttered. "If this law is passed, every one of you will follow it. If not, I assume your wand will be broken in two by Ministry officials, and how happy will you be then? I doubt any of you will be thinking yourselves too clever to be stuck as an incompetent squib." Hermione felt sick and pushed her dessert of chocolate pudding away. She wasn't in the mood for it anymore. Did I write this? And as she did, she found herself gazing at Fred, who was looking at her in worry. She felt an odd jump in her stomach. She waved it off instantly. After all, it was probably another reaction to the thought of a marriage law, because oh, what a horrible thought it was. Author's note. I hope you liked it. Rate and review. No flames, please. I'll be updating soon, I promise. That is the first chapter. Woo! So where we go from here is going to depend a lot on you guys. As I said, there are 12 chapters, so I am planning on making 12 videos. But if it doesn't do very well, I'm going to continue with the series. But uploads may be more spaced out, so you won't get them as quickly. But if it gets a lot of comments and a lot of likes, and you, I don't know, share it with your friends because you think it's funny, then things will move along at a much quicker pace. So if you liked it, please do let me know. Your opinion counts incredibly a lot. with these videos, but I did have a lot of fun, so I am really looking forward to doing the rest of this series. Make sure you follow me and Michelle on all our social media links, but most importantly, Instagram. That is the best way to keep up with us and to interact with us. Make sure you follow Michelle's blog, and also I have a health Instagram you should definitely go follow. I'm going to be more active on that in the coming weeks. But most importantly, don't forget to subscribe!